Stay right. Where's that egg?
No, you can't do anything else right now. You have to leave everybody alone because we're working now. So if you want to get I'm sending it right now. Yeah, hold on.
What's the meeting number?
So I was trying to find it. What, 9, it's right here.
You're gonna have to read it to me.
973
Uh-huh.
23 89 7146. It doesn't have a passcode.
Okay, 97323897146.
Wait, you're missing an 8 in there.
Okay,
Here, I'm missing. Right here, you got it. 97323897146. Yeah, that's
Okay.
the part.
I'll log in.
So you push view the event and then ask to log in.
Here, we've already got people.
Hey, Mary.
Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Better now that I see you. I think you're on mute, dear.
My computer's just too sensitive for me.
I got you.
Touch one thing and there you are. Well, it is a beautiful, almost spring day in Baton Rouge here.
It's pretty nice here. Sure is.
Excellent. Now, I can't see you, Mike, but I can hear you.
Well, I don't have anything that says that my video is not on. I have a thing I can click that says stop video, but when
Okay. Oh, there you, well, no.
No,
Hi, Judy.
Hey. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Are you our hostess for tonight?
Well, kinda, for part of it.
Well, great. Thank you.
Mary, I don't know what to say about the video component. It's not showing for me either, but I don't have a choice to do anything about it. I'm familiar with the little toggle switch and
Okay.
not seeing my face is no great loss, but I do want to be able to see the pictures. So
Yeah. That's the plan.
we'll just hope for the best.
There you go. I'm gonna step away for a second, just so
Surely.
Brooke-
Here, let me see.
Well, Mike, my technical expert suggested that when you hit start video, that then the video will work. I don't know.
I have a box that says stop video, but not one that says start. So I've toggled it on and off a couple times. I'll do it again.
Okay.
All right.
Really don't know what to say. I'm in the same Zoom app that I normally use.
Well, we still have, we have some minutes here. So if you want to shut your computer down and start over, which is the only thing I know to do.
I
That's
can
what
try
the tech,
that.
that's what the tech guys always tell me.
I don't have the log on for the meeting. I had to go through the web page to get it, but I will certainly try that.
Okay, well, let me get Brooke to send you the link.
All right.
Okay. Brooke, can you send Mike the link?
See, this is what mine looks like. And you can use my iPad if you want, but it says join now.
All right, Mary, I'm going to try this.
And Brooke's sending you the link, Mike.
All right.
Who are these people?
It wouldn't be a Zoom call if we didn't have technical difficulty.
That's funny.
Who are you?
Gosh, I just want to thank everybody for being here with us tonight. I would like to ask everybody to put yourself on mute. We tried to set the program so it would do that for you, but that would be, you could help us with that. Just, I know all of you are probably pros at Zoom.
I've got my camera.
Oh, somebody needs to put themselves on mute there. So just a couple of housekeeping details. The mute button is down there on the bottom left corner of the screen. And then in the middle of the screen at the bottom is the chat box. And if you do have questions that you'd like to pose during the call, please put them there and we'll try to tend to those when we get done. We're still waiting for some more people to come in.
Oh, I
see it is good.
Well, Mary, I've been in and out of this several times and there's no start video option for me. I have stop video, which I have toggled.
Okay.
What device is he on?
I am on my MacBook Pro that we've used for several practice sessions.
Well, I bet you it happened to me. It's the same thing happened to you. Every time there's an upgrade or update or something, things change and you have to go back in the settings and find the right camera thing, or you have to get off and get back on. I hate that. That's what I don't like about technology. But okay, because I just wanted to make sure I was on to know what I was doing. But I kept trying to get on with the computer and I couldn't get on, so I just went on the cell phone and got on. But thanks. I'll just wait till hopefully you'll be on.
Mike, when you go to your start, do you not have a start video button at the very bottom? Because you may be able to choose your camera down there. It may just be a camera choice.
It says stop video. That's the only choice I have.
Okay, but if you click on you don't have a little up or down arrow that might give you some options?
Yeah, and one of them's video settings. I'm over there now and it just says FaceTime HD camera built in. I'm using that.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, because that was make sure that the camera, the correct camera, it didn't default to something flaky.
I guess my bigger worry is about the screen share. So I'm ready to try that whenever you are. And Mary, you're on mute.
I have a real talent for doing that. Well, I just want to welcome everybody to the Old State Capitol's virtual program on the power of photography. This is being done in conjunction with an exhibit that we have on display right now. It is Jacob Riis, How the Other Half Lives. It's an exhibit that really explores the power of photography. Riis was a photographer back in the early 1900s, and he lived in poverty himself, and then became a reporter and photographer in New York. And he took startling photos of the living conditions for families and children. And people were really shocked at the living conditions of folks in one of the nation's richest cities. So tonight we've asked Mike DuBose, who is an award-winning photographer who has been all over the United States and to more than 40 countries, to share his photojournalism with us. I've had the great pleasure of having Mike visit us here in Baton Rouge, sadly because of hurricanes, but he has some tremendous photography to share with us. At the end of the program, our education curator, Caroline Kennedy, is going to come on and help facilitate any questions that are in the chat box. And she's also going to tell you how you can view the Jacob Riis exhibit here at the Old State Capitol. So we're very proud to have Mike DuBose with us tonight. His work and the work of Jacob Riis and many others makes our world a much better place. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you and we're going to see what happens.
Thank you so much, Mary. I have a message that the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Uh-oh. Well, we're going to fix that.
All right.
الشوربة خلصت؟
جيب لك بطاطس بالشوربة؟
هي شوربة وشوية لبن قصدي شوية عليها شوية ملح وشوية ليمون.
ملح وليمون.
All right, I think we're good here. All right. Can everybody see that?
Oh, wonderful. Yes.
All right.
Perfect.
Thank you all, and sorry for the little hiccup there. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here and to have this opportunity to discuss the profession of photojournalism, which has given so much to me over the past 40 years. Photojournalism holds a mirror up to society and says, this is us. And much like the images in our own bathroom mirrors, we don't always like what we see. News photographers capture moments big and small, times of joy and wonder, of tragedy and triumph. Their pictures can make you smile or cringe. At their best, they should make you feel something. Maybe it's a glimpse of how people from another culture live, or the chance to visually experience a place you'll never visit. It can be something as simple as capturing a little slice of everyday life in a new way. Photography is a powerful communication tool that reaches across barriers of language, age, culture, and even literacy. When our kids were just learning to talk, I made them each a little book with pictures of our extended family. They could point to the pictures of their grandparents and clearly relate the images to the real people. I made another for my mom when she developed Alzheimer's disease and had trouble remembering the names of the grandkids. The pictures connected with her diminished memory when words failed. As Jacob Riis showed us more than 100 years ago, photojournalism can affect change by calling attention to little seen parts of our world. I'm going to share a few pictures that I feel have stories to tell, photos that demonstrate some of the many ways photography can communicate. I'll do this in silence so you can concentrate on the pictures, and I'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. I've been privileged to visit Africa a couple of dozen times during my career and have always been impressed by the strength and resilience of the people there. The seeds for this project were planted during my frequent walks, especially in the rural areas, where I came to realize how much time and effort goes into meeting daily needs. Getting food, water, and shelter, the basics of life that we often take for granted, requires a real daily struggle for many of our brothers and sisters. I'd make a few pictures to show this around the edges of whatever assignment I had at the time and think someday I'd really love to dig into this a little deeper. United Methodist News is a small operation funded by the denomination. There's not a lot of extra time or money to go around, but over a period of about 3 years, we were able to add on a little reporting time to a few trips that were already planned, and we carved out enough money to allow for 2 specific trips, one to Malawi and one to Mozambique, both in Southern Africa, where we could concentrate on showing both the need and the ways the church is helping. Now, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to share some photos from my dream project, Water is Life, that examines the daily struggle to obtain clean water in Africa. My grandparents, who lived in rural South Carolina, did not have indoor plumbing until I was in high school. So I always knew that not everybody has easy access to running water. But it took a few of those trips to Africa to understand the impact of having to carry every drop of water your family uses in a bucket. This is Emily, 14, and Malvin, 13, walking to fetch water at the end of their school day in Masvingo, Zimbabwe. Emily walked the last few steps to and from the water source in bare feet because the site is considered sacred. The rock face coming up from the spring is pretty steep, but Emily, still barefoot, managed without spilling a drop. In order to be respectful and still follow the story wherever it led, reporter Kathy Gilbert and I left our shoes behind as well. There's yours truly. I can guarantee you my feet are nowhere near as tough as Emily's. The job of fetching water falls mostly to women and girls. Many girls miss part of their school day or study time in order to carry water for their families. The filled buckets weigh somewhere around 35 or 40 pounds, depending on how much they feel they can carry without sloshing. This is Zayu, 13, carrying water for her family near Dorwine, Liberia. Oftentimes, the water they fetch is of poor quality. Maria is filling a bucket from the Domo River outside Lemekmbulo village in Mozambique. She and Hortensia carry one bucket between them so they can share the burden of the full bucket on their way back to the village. Their round trip journey is about 2 miles, and they may make the same trip several times per day. The missions agency of the United Methodist Church says that more than 750 million people around the world do not have reliable water access. Here, Felizarda draws water from a shallow, open well in the bush outside Omwani in Mozambique. Reverend Naftal Nambiri shows one of several shallow holes filled with cloudy water from which his parishioners draw their drinking water in Pale village in Mozambique. Here's a different one of the holes where you can better see what the water in there looks like. It would be one thing to use water like this in the garden, but Reverend Naftal and his parishioners drink from these shallow pits every day. Very few people in rural Africa have easy access to water for agriculture. Claudia, 12, is watering her family's garden plot near Zavala, Mozambique. Household tasks like laundry often fall to the bottom of the priority list when water is scarce. Here, residents of the Goz Amer refugee camp in eastern Chad, near the Darfur region of Somalia, wash laundry in a muddy pond and spread it to dry on the shore. This is the oldest picture published in the project, shot in 2007 during a trip to report on the church's campaign to fight malaria. It was made from the window of a UN airplane on final approach to land on a dirt runway near the camp. I do always try to get a window seat. Here's a shot of our plane. 8 agencies report more than 2.4 billion people lack sanitation facilities. Violet bathes her son Demfero with water from a shallow, muddy well in Mzura, Malawi. This is the water source that Violet used to bathe her son. When UM News found the resources to let us pursue the story, we needed to find somebody to help us get access to a rural village that didn't have a source of clean water. Mercy Chikosi, on the right from Malawi, agreed to host us. Hospitality is a point of honor among most folks in Africa, and part of that is worrying about the comfort of your guests. Mercy suggested a nice hotel in the city. We'll come by and pick you up about 9:30 after you've had your breakfast, she said. But the women go to fetch water early in the morning, don't they? I asked. Oh, yes, she said, very early. After a little back and forth to assure her that we were indeed serious about going with the women, no matter how early they started, reporter Kathy and I found ourselves walking with the women of Genjete village in rural Malawi as they fetched water for their families in the pre-dawn darkness. And much like Jacob Riis more than 100 years earlier, I found myself with an important story to tell about an issue many people weren't aware of, all while working in the dark and pushing the technical limits of my camera gear. I felt a little bit like the dog who has chased the bus every day for years and finally catches it. Now what? I was very grateful for the little pools of light provided by the women's cell phones and flashlights that I mixed with some light from my camera flash. The rustling of the corn, the feel of the mud beneath my boots, and the women's gentle singing, which they used to buck up each other's spirits and warn off animals in the bushes, are sensations I will never forget. At one point, I made myself quit fooling with f-stops, shutter speeds, and flash settings for a few moments just to try and soak it all in. We reached the open well that serves their village just as the sky was starting to brighten in the east. They continued singing as each woman filled her bucket while struggling for balance on the muddy edge of the pond. They make their way back through cornfields and sometimes even make a second round trip, all at an hour that's not normally on my clock. For me, this was an absolutely extraordinary experience, something that touched me deeply. For the women, this was just the start of another day. They had meals to prepare and children to bathe before sending them off to school. In case anybody's wondering, I'll pause here for just a moment and say a word about the phones. People my age from the US grew up with telephone service that reached most communities. It was carried by copper wires on the same utility poles used for electricity. When cell phones came along, they were, for most of us, a luxury item, not a necessity in the way many of us regarded our home phones. Most of Africa, especially the rural areas, skipped all that wiring. They didn't have the money for it. Cell phone service there is cheap and sold by the minute on scratch-off cards available on every street corner in the cities and in grass-covered in the countryside. In places without electricity, there's usually an entrepreneur with a generator or a solar panel who will charge your phone for a few coins. To be clear, this photo is from Haiti, but you can find these places all over Africa. An important part of our story was how we can help provide access to clean water. And there are a variety of ways to do that. Here, GB Moses climbs up from a concrete-lined well shaft in Niangusu, Côte d'Ivoire in West Africa after replacing the bucket that had fallen off its rope. In rural Africa, simple, robust solutions that have stood the test of time are often best. People in Niangusu had gone back to using the old well with its hand-drawn bucket after the failure of a newer system that was intended to provide easy access and safer water. Some years earlier, donors had provided a small gravity-fed water system for the village. It relied on an electric well pump to fill the water tank, which then served several taps throughout the village. They quit using the new system due to lack of money for electricity to run the pump and the scarcity of spare parts. This brings up the whole notion of appropriate technology, which requires a thoughtful response from aid agencies and donors to ensure that proposed solutions will be affordable and effective. Not all Western-style solutions, no matter how well-intentioned, are appropriate to the task. Here, villagers celebrate the completion of a new water system in Nadambuki, Mozambique. When there's money to support a project of this size and a strong community to look after the infrastructure, something like this solar-powered well pump and water tower can become the centerpiece of a larger village. The solar panel provides electricity for free, and the simple plumbing system serves a single tap in the center of the village. Women line up to fill their containers from the tap supplied by the water tower. The water system is clearly the pride and joy of the community and also serves as a social center while the women wait to fill their containers. One solution that has withstood the test of time is a borehole with a hand-operated pump. The pump is built for hard daily use, and repair parts are available in most towns of any size. We had asked to see the process of drilling a new well from start to finish. We were hosted in the tiny villages of Mudimblani and Lamekmumbulo in Mozambique, where the Missouri United Methodist Church's Mozambique initiative was drilling wells. Here, community members welcomed the start of drilling operations with singing. Our host for this trip was Ezekiel Natumbo, who is the local program manager for the Mozambique initiative. Easy's love for the people and commitment to the cause of clean water are an inspiration, as was his ability to maneuver us over roads like this, often in the dark, to get to the villages. And just so you can get a sense of what the villages are like, here's where we had lunch in Lamekmumbulo. We were treated as guests of honor and were seated in the only chairs in the village. The women who prepared our meal are sitting on the ground to the left of the tree. The grass-roofed village kitchen is in the background, and the tents where the drilling crew stayed are further back. Seated around the table are reporter Kathy, Reverend Elena of the local United Methodist Church, Easy, whom you've already met, and Isidro Kumau, owner of the drilling company. The 4-member drilling crew deputized men from the village when they needed extra muscle. They stayed in the village 24/7 until they hit water. In a remote area like this, where any vehicle larger than the occasional motorbike is a rarity, the drilling process and equipment always drew a crowd of onlookers and sidewalk superintendents. On the left, Adelino and Jose work on the pump that circulates water to cool the drill bit and eject debris from the well shaft. At right, Jose prepares to install casing pipe inside the well shaft. School children were especially amused by the process. And can you imagine carrying your machete to school every day? The drillers kept track of their progress through various layers of dirt and rock by collecting samples of the drilling debris each time they added another section of drill shaft. Many parts of the process required a few extra hands recruited from men in the village. In order to stay on schedule, the crew often worked into the twilight. Jose Conjo is head of the drilling crew. The drilling process requires thousands of gallons of water to lubricate and cool the bit and to eject debris from the well shaft. Working by the headlights of a tractor, Adelino prepares to pump water from the Domo River. In order to keep the process moving on schedule, workers often refilled their portable water tank at night. Here, women reach out to touch the spigot that will be installed on the new well while it is still tied down in the back of the crew's pickup truck. You can tell by their faces that these women know what's coming and what it means for their lives. As it becomes clear that the borehole has struck water, the women begin singing in praise and thanksgiving. Here, the drillers uncoil an air hose that will be used to blow drilling debris out of the well shaft. They're accustomed to making do with aging equipment and little in the way of spare parts. Here, Jose and Joao soften the air hose with an ember from the fire so that it can be attached to the air compressor. And Adelino uses the compressed air hose to clear wastewater from the well shaft. The dedication of the new wells was cause for great celebration in both villages. Singing is part of everyday life most places in rural Africa, and certainly a centerpiece of any celebration.
You're so right. It's just your regular.
Here, Pastor Manuel leads a song from the hymnal. They don't have but a couple of those, so many of the songs are done by call and response. The ribbons for the ribbon cutting were made from strips of bark decorated with flowering plants and little bits of plastic. Reverend Hortensia, a supervisory pastor from the capital, officiated the dedication in Mudamblane. The village elders were among the first to sample the well water. And once the formal ceremony was over, the kids all had their turn for a drink. The dedication plaque features the United Methodist cross and flame and this passage from the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verse 14. Whoever drinks from the water that I will give will never be thirsty again. The water that I give will become in those who drink it a spring of water that bubbles up into eternal life. It is hard to overstate the impact that having access to clean water will have. Joseph, 5, catches the final trickle of water after filling his bucket at a well behind John Kofi Asma United Methodist Church in Monrovia, Liberia. I'd like to thank you for taking time to hear a little about this issue, which is so dear to my heart, and for your interest in some of the history and practice of photojournalism. In the time we have left, I'd like to offer a few simple tips you might find helpful for your own photography. There's an often quoted saying from National Geographic photographer Jim Richardson: if you want to be a better photographer, stand in front of more interesting stuff. It really is that simple. So if you learn only one thing from me here tonight, I hope it's this: the key to good pictures is good content. Your own efforts to put yourself in front of interesting, visually rich material will do more for your photography than anything I could tell you here. These are from a series on serpent handling churches in Appalachia when I worked in Knoxville. Here, Gael, 10, shares a hospital bed with Margalit at the Arambo Health Center in Bukavu, Democratic Republic of Congo. The two are not related. There just weren't enough beds for each to have her own. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I get to stand in front of more than my own share of interesting stuff. But there's plenty of interesting stuff to be found closer to home. The key is learning to think like a photographer and evaluate the visual potential of a photo opportunity well before you pick up your camera and head out the door. There's no sense wasting your time on photography if there's nothing there to see. The Reverend Matt Hall conducts a renewal of wedding vows service for Nick and Stephanie atop Sugar Run Mountain, just off the Appalachian Trail near Parisburg, Virginia. Hall serves as a United Methodist chaplain appointed to the trail community. Capturing a telling moment of human interaction or emotion is central to the practice of photojournalism. That one little sliver of time where all the elements come together is both precious and perishable. Make sure you don't miss it. Do your best to maximize any chance, however brief, to catch that fleeting moment. This means camera out of the bag and turned on, fresh batteries, basic exposure set, flash handy if you think you might need it. You want to care for as many of the technical details as you can ahead of time so that you're free to concentrate on anticipating and reacting to things as they unfold. Here, Reverend Katie Newman prays with John Weaver in front of a neighbor's wind-damaged home while a volunteer team makes emergency repairs to his roof in Marion, Iowa. Weaver's mobile home was severely damaged during a derecho windstorm. Even if you're not practicing news photography, catching a natural moment of interaction can improve any photo. A father helps his son with basic hygiene at a makeshift camp in the municipal soccer stadium in Léogâne, Haiti, following the 2010 earthquake. I was able to catch the firefighter nuzzling the rescued puppy by occasionally putting my cameras down and just looking around while covering a house fire. It's easy to get head down in a chaotic situation and miss something. You need to keep your head on a swivel and do your best to be aware of what's going on around you at all times. And I could sense Big Brother's gentle frustration with his sisters dawdling when they should be on their way to school. I took a knee nearby, tried to be inconspicuous, and kept an eye on things while she fooled with her socks. When he looked up as if to say, "See what I have to deal with?" I was ready. I would suggest that light is easily the second most important attribute of a good photograph. After all, the word photography literally means writing with light. If you've ever struggled with lighting in your own photographs, it will come as no secret that your eye sees light differently than your camera does. It's more than we can master in these few minutes, but being aware of this fact is the first step toward learning to deal with it. Students work together on spelling words in the combined kindergarten and first grade classroom at the Bishop Judith Craig Children's Village in Douazon, Liberia. Digital cameras are a huge help in this regard, letting you test various lighting conditions and exposure solutions with instant feedback. Be on the lookout for interesting light and take some time to play with it. This was shot along the Malecón in Havana, Cuba in the late afternoon when the sun was low in the sky, leaving much of the road in shadow. But I spotted a thin shaft of sunlight shining between a couple of buildings and noticed how the cars would light up briefly as they passed through it. I planted myself there, pre-focused, and waited for an interesting car to come along. Sometimes, though, you have to make a picture even when the light doesn't look very good at first glance. This is a group of traditional birth attendants who had come to a small clinic near Bo, Sierra Leone, to meet us. In this case, there was no coming back. I needed a picture right then with the light at hand. All it took was switching sides to avoid having to shoot directly into the sun. An often neglected part of many pictures is the background. A carefully chosen background can carry a lot of useful information. If you're presented with a great background, do your best to make good use of it. The Reverend Kermit Roberson surveys flood damage at Roberts United Methodist Church Cemetery in Denham Springs, Louisiana, where floodwaters had lifted many caskets out of their concrete vaults. A subsistence-level farmer begins his workday in the Great Rift Valley in Ethiopia. If the background is distracting or doesn't contribute anything useful, do your best to minimize it by changing camera angles or controlling depth of field to blur unwanted details. You've worked hard to identify a great story and perhaps endured some difficult travel to get to a place where good photos are happening. Make sure your readers get a sense of being there with you. Don't go to all that trouble and then exclude the very scenery that helps tell your story. A sense of place helps viewers understand what it feels like to be there. We had stopped after spotting a pretty church along the side of the road. I spent about 10 minutes walking around the church and working my way up the hill toward the crosses. The added height let me take in the valley below and the cloud-studded sky. A wide-angle lens gave prominence to the crosses in the foreground. 3 crosses stand above the cemetery at Israel United Methodist Church near Montrose, West Virginia. A sense of place doesn't always mean a wide-angle view. Here, a telephoto lens gently blurs and compresses the background while still giving a sense of the overall scene. Survivors of Typhoon Haiyan leave with emergency food rations provided by the United Methodist Committee on Relief in Dagami, Philippines. While a broad view helps set the scene, don't overlook the telling details that bring depth and context to your photography. An outstretched arm rests on the fence at the US-Mexico border. A fisherman removes his hook from a piranha caught from the Amazon River. And muddy boot prints help show some of what Hurricane Katrina left behind in New Orleans. Use your camera to take the reader somewhere they've never been before. Help them see in a new way. Climb up high, squat down low. Don't make all your photographs from your own standing eye level. This photo was made from a library window at the Methodist Seminary in Havana, Cuba. Taking a knee here helped emphasize the debris in the foreground while placing the volunteer in a better position nearer the damaged church. Volunteer Sumant Joshi clears tornado debris in front of East End United Methodist Church in Nashville, Tennessee. Be alert for ways to frame your subject to help direct the viewer's eye to the important parts of your photo. An arch, a doorway, even a tree branch can help direct attention where you want it to go. Volunteer Eric Carter of South Roanoke United Methodist Church helps repair a home in the Swinging Bridge community near Clay, West Virginia, for a survivor of the severe floods that struck the area in June 2016. A young boy peers through the window of the United Methodist Church at the Zaleka refugee camp in Malawi. Thank you so much for your patient attention. I do hope you'll take time to see the Jacob Riis exhibit, How the Other Half Lives, at Louisiana's Old State Capitol.
Mike, thank you so much. This is Caroline speaking. And while you've been giving your talk, we've gotten some questions in. If you have a few moments, we'd love to hear what you have to say. I just want to preface those questions with saying it's been a joy to work with you. And it's just so cool to hear someone with the coolest job on earth describe what they do. So thanks so much, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been great. How much did it cost to set up the solar powered well? There was a tall blue one. In general, how much do these projects cost? And is it the Methodist Church paying for these? Are these group projects? Is it part governmental? Or do you not have to worry about those details?
That's a great question, Caroline. There are a variety of ways to fund a well and a variety of costs involved depending on the geology of the underlying area and what's going to be the top of the well. So this solar panel and water tower is on the more expensive side, and a borehole like what you saw with the pump handle is a lot less expensive. I'm told that a borehole can be had for maybe a little less than $10,000 US. It really depends. Those two wells that we saw in progress, one of them was about 40 meters deep, the other one about 80 meters deep. And so that affects the end cost. But there are a variety of donors, aid agencies, and government officials all involved in any project like this. And yes, you're right. I mostly don't have to worry about those details.
And if one of us out here wants to contribute in some way, we're going to gather information and send it out to you all when we send the recording of this program. I did get some messages from folks who would like to see it again. I too would like to see the images and hear some of those tips again. But if any of you all want to contribute to projects like these, there are ways to do that, and we'll send you that information. Got some more questions for you, Mike. What is the best camera for a beginner who's really into photography but just beginning? That's from Harry.
All right, Harry, there are so many choices in cameras that I'm a little bit hesitant to recommend one. Whatever camera you choose, it's important to master some basic functions of it. So you should understand what the autofocus is looking for, what the auto exposure modes are, how to fumble with all this. You should play with it for a while at home before you go out with it to try to capture something that's dear to you. But there are so many advances in photography that I would be hesitant to recommend a specific model. I'll just say one thing: good pictures come from your heart and your head and not from the camera store. The camera helps, but.
And Dennis wants to know what your background was in photography, how you learned your photo skills. He also added, like so many other people have been saying, how impressed he is with all of the photos we've seen tonight. But he'd like to know how you learned your photo skills.
Well, I was very fortunate that my dad was a serious amateur photographer. He made his living as a scientist, but he loved photography, so much so that he built a darkroom on our back porch when I was a kid. And so I grew up peeking over the darkroom sink and watching him develop prints. And that ignited within me this desire to do that. And then I worked my way through junior high school yearbook as a photographer, gave me a hall pass so I could walk around freely. I thought that was pretty cool. I have a journalism degree, writing journalism degree. I studied photography at the graduate level at Ohio University in Athens, and just kind of worked my way through a variety of photography jobs, whatever I could get. I was a stringer for United Press International. I worked as a assistant in a photo studio where we made pictures of everything from pots and pans to caskets to underwear models, just whatever came through the door, and finally got a job in the newspaper business. And so that has been my only career, and I'm 61 now. So I was very fortunate to be able to work an entire career in this profession that I love.
So you are a true photojournalist, which is perfect because the exhibit at the Old State Capitol is of Jacob Riis's photographs and the story he was trying to tell. Often people call him the first photojournalist that in this country, and the one with the largest impact at that time to change and encourage people to move towards social reforms. Two more questions for you from our chat box. And then I'd like to ask you, then I'm going to give all of you a treat. So one question is, oh, this is a suggestion from John. He says, gosh, I'd love to see a book with your words, just as you presented them here this evening, and your pictures. I totally agree.
Well, that's very, very generous of you. Thank you.
What challenges did you have, if any, to your own health on these overseas trips?
That's a great question. A lot of things that we take for granted here are just a little bit more difficult in a developing country. I have a great doctor here in town, and so I'm protected against a variety of communicable diseases by inoculations. Malaria is always an issue, and there is a preventative regimen that I take for that. I try to balance being a good guest and also not eating or drinking anything I shouldn't. Sometimes I make a mistake, and it's sometimes hard to refuse something that somebody with a good heart has prepared for our meal. So I have been sick a few times, usually nothing more than a mild stomach upset. The one thing, if anybody really gets worried about me, I tell them, if you really want to worry about something, you can worry about an automobile accident, because some of those roads are pretty dicey. Some of them are not well lit, and it's not unusual to have a hazard in the middle of the road, whether that be a hole in the road, some livestock animal, or a small child. So traffic accidents are always a little bit of a worry.
Wow. We're glad you're safely home from your last adventure. And Eileen, a volunteer who's been with us at the Old State Capitol volunteering for years, asked, what program, if any, do you suggest on how to back up computer-saved photos? And if you'd like to leave that up to IT experts, that's fine too. But do you have one that you like?
Eileen, that's just an absolutely fabulous question. And it's so important to protect those images. When I'm out shooting, I'm worried about keeping the images that I shot yesterday safe today and tomorrow until I get them home. So rather than recommend a specific program, I will recommend a bit of a strategy, and that is to have at least 3 different places where these photographs are stored on 3 different media. And one of those hopefully is stored somewhere off-site. So if you've got a family member across town, or you can give a couple to your neighbor. Before our bank got flooded, I used to keep a hard drive full of pictures in the safe deposit box at the bank, thinking that was safe. So a strategy of multiple backups is just absolutely a great idea.
And now for the treat. So we're lucky here at the Old State Capitol because we did a dry run through of this program. And so I've now seen it twice, and I can't wait to see the recording a few more times. And we were curious because you spoke so much about the singing, that the women supported each other's hard work early every morning by singing together as they were collecting water. And we asked if you took video, if you took audio of that as well as their photographs. And you said that you had, and I wonder if you can play any of that tonight.
Yeah, we'll just play you a small clip of that so you can get a feel for this.
Thanks. Wow. Can you imagine collecting all that water, walking all that distance, and having the energy to also sing with that
Insane.
kind of enthusiasm? Well, thanks again, Mike. I invite all of you to come to the Old State Capitol. It's very safe to visit. It's a huge facility. Please wear a mask. We have sanitation stations throughout. We're open free of charge Tuesdays through Saturdays. And this exhibit, Mike, whoops, I was about to call it Mike DuBose exhibit. Jacob Riis will be up through Saturday, March 13th. And who knows, maybe we can work together again, Mike DuBose, and bring you here for an exhibit. This exhibit, the Jacob Riis exhibit, is part of the National Endowment for the Humanities On the Road program. We're so lucky to get to work with them. For more information about this program or a walkthrough of our current exhibit, for those of you who can't visit in person, go to our website, louisianasoldstatecapital.org. Thank you all so very, very much. And thanks again to you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It was a great honor. Thank you.
Take care. Y'all be safe. I just saw that and I'm not on mute. Excuse me, guys.